I know you're very interested in the sudden adult death syndrome. Is that the predominant diagnosis that is resulting in this data, or had you seen that straight at the beginning? Tell the story there.
Well, we just started seeing strange and sudden stories, not just sudden deaths, but just, uncles dying, grandmothers dying, lots of people dying in 2021, not so much in 2020, at least in my circles. This is anecdotes, and this is what got me interested. So when we started seeing in the insurance data, in January 3rd of 2022, CEO Scott Davison kind of set the whole thing in motion when he said that in his book of business, he was seeing 40% excess mortality, especially among younger aged working folks, which is something that we shouldn't be seeing in year two of a pandemic with, vaccines. So that in and of itself is just anomalous. And the only thing that I suspect to change were mandates and vaccines. And as time rolled on, I started gathering my team. And in March, we analyzed the CDC data, just straight CDC data. And we found a couple of strange things. The CDC on their website didn't break it down by age. They showed all ages. And it looked like, the pandemic in year two was almost as bad as year one, but not quite. But when you broke it down by age, there was a strange and alarming signal, and particularly in the 25 to 44 age cohort, the millennials. That cohort experienced into the fall of 2021 an 84% rise in excess mortality. And then it leveled off after the fall, it came back down. So I'm known for this famous chart with CDC data breaking down that age group. No one's disputed it. No one said that we're wrong. No one's challenged us. It's just numbers. And it showed that age cohort showing a major acceleration into August, September, October. And we call that rate of change. And, I don't have the chart, but it was like this, and then it went like that. And that's a signal in Wall Street. That's a temporal signal that something has changed. And something I suspect was the fact that you got to remember, if you go back to 2021, corporations were starting to mandate the vaccine well before Biden even, gave his executive order on September 9th. Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley were already mandating vaccines in August, and they led the way on Wall Street, and they led the way in corporate America, quite frankly. So that's when it really started to hit, and then people had to choose between keeping their job or not.
Could you tell the causes of death that were responsible for that second derivative change? In other words, was it, or do you have access to that data? What my brain immediately does is I go, oh, we saw a lot of suicide and opioid and alcohol deaths that went straight up in that age group also. Were you able to parse that out?
So the pushback is exactly what you just said, and I'll address that. So people said, hey Ed, hey, great, sure, but those are, there's suicides, deaths of despair, opioid addiction, fentanyl addiction, and missed cancer screening treatments. Those are the three reasons. And fair enough. Okay, if the excess mortality had gone up to 20% and leveled off, that would have been fine. But my problem with it was the temporal rate of change into a 3-month event that we all know occurred. And I find it very hard to believe that everyone decided in a 3-month time frame to excessively commit suicide, overdose on fentanyl, or miss cancer screening treatment. So there was a signal there. And more recently, I've discovered some new data that literally almost explains all those things away. And I'd like to share that with you. I shared it on another show yesterday, and it's kind of eye-popping. There's something important that I discovered last week. Number one, it's group life. And generally speaking, I had the idea in my head, this is a healthier population. And that's from deductive reasoning, that sounds about right. So I called one of my actuarial whistleblowers to find some reports. And while she was looking for a report, she did find one from 2016. The Society of Actuaries released another report last Monday. And what they said is that in the first first let me set this up. The 2016 study that they did covering years 2010 to 2013 showed that the group life insured population, which is a subset of the US population, experiences in any given year 30 to 40% the mortality rate of the general US population. So that's what we call a healthier population. The explanation for that is they tend to be higher educated, higher earnings, and just healthier because they're employed. And to keep your group life, you have to stay employed. So that's a self-selecting group. So they're a healthier group. Roll into this report that came out from the Society of Actuaries last Monday. They said that in the first 9 months of 2020, COVID affected everybody. Nobody escaped. So in 2020, the general U.S. population's excess mortality was above that of the group life insurance group. Then in 2021, they report that flipped, that ratio flipped. And what did we see? We saw 40% excess mortality as reported by the Society of Actuaries. This is a survey of 80% of the revenues of the group life industry. And we saw a 31.7% excessive mortality in the general US population. That's an 8-point differential. So there's no doubt in my mind that something happened in 2021. Using simple deductive reasoning, the only thing that happened that would cause working age people between 25 and 64 to suddenly see that kind of increase would be the one thing that changed: vaccines and mandates. Now, let me roll into the disability data, which confirms this insurance data. My two PhD partners in my hedge fund did a study on disability in August, and we looked at it, and it was pretty stunning. And then it kind of foots with what I just told you about the insurance industry. The general population, overall US population, ages 16 through 64, their disability rate rose in 2021 from an average of about 7.5% to 8%. So that's a 6.6% increase in disability. Okay. The statistical deviation that we found looking at the disability data, overall, the total absolute number was 29 to 30 million for about the last 5 years. It's now encroaching upon 33 million. And if you look at the graph, it shows a definite change. And so they analyzed what's called the year-over-year rate of change. And they came up with the fact that was a 3 standard deviation event, which on Wall Street only occurs 0.03% of the time. So something happened. It's a signal. If that was a stock, I would analyze that stock to figure out what's going on and probably buy some because something's happened, something changed. Let's go back to the data. So you can break down this data by age group and a status. So there's the population, the whole US population. Then there's something called the civilian workforce, which is about 161 million people. Then there's something called the employed workforce, which is about 9,800 million people. When you looked at the employed workforce, their disability rate was generally hovering around 3.1%, and it rose to about 3.8%, which is a 22% increase in the rate of disability. So that is so the general population's rate of increase in disability rate was 6.6. The employed population was 22.6%. So then we broke it down by men and women in the employed group. This is ages 16 through 64. And we saw that women had a rate of increase of 32% increase in their disability rate, and men a 19%. So whatever's going on seems to be affecting women disproportionately to men. And Dr. Naomi Wolf has reported that from the Pfizer documents, the adverse events seem to affect women more. So there's 2 different databases confirming each other. My conclusion is this: the employed population is generally a healthier population, and COVID should not have affected them more adversely than the rest of the population in 2021. This did not occur in 2020, so something changed. So it's my contention that through forced mandates and vaccinations, the employed population has been injured and some deaths have occurred. While if you were not employed, you had a choice. You just had a choice.
The CDC states that COVID-19 vaccines are safe, effective, and reduce the risks of COVID-19. Always consult with your personal physician before making any decision about your health.